Tech Cocktail Sessions, educational and inspirational talks from experienced startup founders, entrepreneurs, and thought leaders.
Basically, wanted to talk to you a little bit about. We'll start out with a little bit of like background. So people that, so everyone here in the audience, a lot of folks are local. There's a lot of folks from CES as well. Just want to get, set the foundation of who's Jeff Clavier, and so people know a little bit more about you. So I guess first off, I already know where you're from, but we can talk about where you're from and then get started with how did you get into investing?
Sure. So a little bit of background. So I was born in French. I'm now a US citizen. Did a Master of Computer Science and a minor in distributed computing, which was the theory of networks. And in the late 80s, we brought, with my startup, Sun workstations in trading floors. And some of you might be old enough to remember what a Sun workstation was. And at the time, it was actually really cool to have a Sun workstation on your desk as a trader. It cost a lot of money. And the company was acquired by Reuters. John Reuters was the CTO of the company, did a sort of a bunch of projects for Reuters, including the Bloomberg killer, which clearly failed because it didn't kill Bloomberg. But actually worked out pretty well and was very successful. Good attempt. And then after 12 years in the world of finance as a CTO, VP engineering, decided to go do something completely different. And I moved to the Valley to become a VP. It was in 2000, in the wrong part of 2000, so it was post the crash. Moved
bad
in
timing.
August, bad timing.
Yeah.
And essentially, that helped me see how fucked up companies were when they raised way too much money ahead of having a product market fit and any idea of product and marketing. So 4 years later, in 2004, when I saw the first generation of consumer internet companies sort of showing up, decided that this made sense. So quit the fund, started SoftTech, and I've been investing as SoftTech ever since. 143 companies.
143 companies. Wow, since 2000. That's pretty impressive. I think I met you right as you were getting started in 2005 in the Valley, and you were at everything.
You were at AOL at the time, right?
I was at AOL, yes. But you
we won't hold that against him, right?
And so, yeah, I mean, I remember you being at every kind of startup event that I was at, and it was just like, you were just there, and it was like all over the place. And so in that time period, I'm curious, how much is that, like how much investing did you do early versus now, like later?
So early, just to put the context in place, yes, I was sort of trained as a traditional VC as part of a traditional organization that was doing sort of Series B, Series C type investments. But I didn't know anyone in the consumer internet space, which was at the time arguably a small community. And so for you to actually get access to the good deals, because investors live and die by having access to the best deals. That's the only way to really make money in this industry. You have to get to know people so that at some point when there is someone looking for money, they actually think of you.
Right.
And so the only way to do that is to hustle your way into the deal. So like you said, I had a deal with my lovely wife that I would basically be out almost every night to go and hang out with entrepreneurs from Monday to Thursday or Friday.
Sounds
sometimes.
like a great deal.
Well, yeah, I guess.
Until you do it.
And I would sort of be out and speaking and hanging out and so on and so forth, and I would offer my help at the time, and if there was something interesting, then I would potentially offer my money as well. And over time, to answer your question, so in the first 3 years, I did about 20 investments. So roughly, 4, 5, 6 per year. There was no reason because it was just my money, right? The first fund one, was essentially my own cash, and I was lucky with two things. I think one was my timing was almost perfect, where I sort of saw the opportunity very early on, and so I managed to get into the room of sort of the angels before the super angel phenomena, which I was part of, and before the whole world turned into wannabe angels, which is the case now.
Right.
Where it feels
we'll talk about that in a little bit.
Yeah.
A little bit further.
So I won't get into that.
Yeah.
So 22 whatever deals in the first 3.5 years, and then I raised one of the first macro VC funds in mid 2007, and since then I've been doing roughly 20 investments per year.
Okay. And those investment sizes, just so people get a sense.
Right now, so when I started, it was 25 or 50 grand.
Right.
Now it's more like $500,000,
Right.
750, $1 million.
Right. So it's changed
Because
a
we
lot.
always, we now invest out of our Fund 4, which is an $85 million fund. We always want to buy between 7 and 10% of the companies. We have a lot of reserves to follow on. So we're really sort of VCs, but we hang out at the early stage where it's
So
kinda
let's talk about
before
that
us.
landscape, because you brought it up already. There's been a trend or shift a little bit in the way things work in venture capital and just in funding in general. So maybe let's start, give a little bit of foundation of how that's changed over the last
Sure.
few years.
So when I became a VC, at that time, VCs were really sort of gatekeepers of innovation because companies needed to raise that initial sort of $5 to $10 million round just to get the product developed and launched,
Right.
because it cost a lot of money. Fast forward 2005, 500K, 250K is enough to actually get going. So you just need to raise that from angels because VCs are not interested. So it creates a void.
Because it's not enough, right?
It's not enough.
Yeah.
If you have a $300 million fund, writing a 250K check at the time doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
So there's a void certainly in the market, and since a lot of angels had lost, the traditional angels had lost a lot of money during the internet bubble explosion, the VCs were not interested to fund those sort of small companies, small rounds. There was basically a need in the market, and there weren't that many people to actually fill up sort of that gap.
Right.
And I was lucky to be there with the
Jumping in
right
with your
cash investment.
25K or
Jumping in,
50K,
doing it.
100K, and then just
And
kept
at
going.
the time, believe it or not, it took 10 people, 12 people to actually do a 250K round.
Right.
Whereas now, everyone would fight to actually do that one, that one round, that one check. And so 2004, 2005, 2006, there's maybe 10, 12, 15 of us who end up doing a lot of those rounds, and we become the super angels.
Right.
And it's not us
Right.
calling ourselves super angels. It's someone in the media saying, they're more active than others, they have bigger wings, so let's call them super angels.
I was looking for that.
Yeah, I know, right? They're seated now. And then in 2006, 2007, pretty much half of the super angel outfits had the opportunity to raise their own funds. So people sort of go to them and say, hey, you've made a lot of money for yourself.
Right.
Take mine,
Right.
invest it.
So
And
it's success that has allowed you or enabled you to do that.
Exactly. And people sort of call them super angel funds, but they are not, because by definition, an angel invests his own money or her own money, whereas a fund invests someone else's money.
So they're literally funds.
Funds.
Yeah.
But they're sized to the opportunity.
Right.
And so that's why we raised our first fund, 15 million, our second fund. First
So
fund was
they're
my
mini
money.
funds
Second
compared
fund.
to like the old school VC fund. Is that what?
Many funds in the sense that they raise more often.
Right.
They will sort of be smaller, but they will have much more sort of velocity.
Churn, yeah.
And so they're sort of different beasts,
Right.
but they're still VCs.
Right.
And so the first generation of super angels raises their funds and so forth. And so by the end of 2008, 2009, you have maybe 10, 12 micro VCs. And then suddenly the big guys want to, essentially the big guys let us take over that sort of gap.
Because they didn't want to put money in there anyway.
Care, didn't pay attention, didn't think much about it or whatever. And so then they want to actually go back and invest at seed, and then you hear about all those seed programs from traditional firms.
Right.
And they start writing 1, 10, 50, 100
So that had to be
checks.
crazy for you too. Like that all of a sudden came out of there was no one accelerator, then two, and then
Well, the good news,
100,000
the good news
accelerators.
that by that time,
Yeah.
we had built enough of a brand and enough of sort of a reputation in the market that we still had access to the good deals.
Right.
But we moved from a situation where we had literally 10, 12 guys that were funding those companies to 10, 12 funds that were funding those companies to now about 60 to 80 micro VC funds.
Right.
The large VCs have basically stopped doing seed programs because it's just too complex for them, and they'd rather work with us anyway.
Right.
And then we have thousands of angels who are interested in investing in companies that are sort of looking at angel list as a way to source those deals. And you therefore have an ecosystem where in the Valley it feels like if you walk up and down University Avenue in Palo Alto, you'll get funded. And it doesn't mean it's good. It means that there's a lot of opportunities for entrepreneurs to actually get funding, which is awesome. But the problem has shifted from will I get seed funded to will I actually raise my Series A or my Series B from traditional firms.
So that was actually my next question. So it's basically a entrepreneurial-friendly market versus.
It is. I think it's, and that's
investors.
what's awesome. It gives people a lot of opportunities to find someone who believes in them and gives them that initial $500,000, million, or collectively, $1 million that gives them a chance to build a product and launch it. And I think that there are a ton of examples, and you just talk to these people and talk about the entire portfolio, which is number of companies that were in their hand and they passed on. And, someone's, piece of shit is someone else's Pinterest. Which I passed on. Yeah, thanks.
You passed on it. Oh yeah. Can we
Yeah,
get
it
the
was
water?
but ugly at the time.
Yeah. It was ugly at the time.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's keep going here. So do you? It's apparently
The owl doesn't want to share the spot.
I can see that. Okay, we'll just not drink water. So do you believe then? So these companies like that you invest in, do you believe in a longer term commitment for these companies, or what's your overall take on like, how long these companies should be in existence? Like, do you usually try to flip them? Like, what's the?
So at the very beginning, when I got started, my very first exit was one of my first investment, and it was a company called Truvio, video search engine. We sold to AOL. I was making fun of AOL.
Yeah, I remember that.
AOL is actually my number one acquired. They've acquired 5 of my companies. So I like AOL. 10 months and 3 weeks. And we did 17 times our money in 10 months and 3 weeks. That's and
fast.
So that was lucky. And at the beginning, you don't know crap. You make a ton of mistake, and you're lucky. And after a while, it feels that you actually maybe a little bit good, not really lucky. The point is, all those sort of early outcomes, people felt that we were trying to flip the company. So there was this expression which was built to flip, if you remember.
Right.
And it's nonsense because you cannot build a company to flip it. It's impossible to intersect, the
market and how it's going to go.
The market strategic trajectory of a big guy, or whatever. And so I think now it's sort of out of the way. Now when we build or when we invest in something, it's because we believe we can build a long-term, sustainable, independent company which will eventually go public. And it's very, very hard to go public. Kind of easier over the last 6 months, but it's kind of very hard to go public. And so all our outcomes, the 30 plus, successful exits we've had to date, were all sort of M&A. But I think that next year, towards the end of this year or early next year, we'll have our first set of IPOs.
Yeah, that's interesting. So recently there's been a lot of talk about how maybe that's not the way to go. How do you feel about it? I mean, it doesn't sound like to this point you've really been.
Look, it's the choice of the CEO as to whether they want to be public company CEOs.
Right.
It's that choice. I think it's a logical way to. It's not a means to an end. It's just a way to get to a point where you can get public financing, be out, be established, be well known, be recognized, and therefore being public makes sense. And if you look at the effect of having a brand like Twitter go out and float, clearly because it's such a well-known brand, they've had a lot of retail interest, and that's why the stock has done so well. Because I see very little justification for Twitter to do twice as in terms of multiple, twice as good as Facebook.
Right.
But they do.
Right. So do you think it's the brand?
Yeah,
is what you're
the
saying.
brand. It's a retail brand. People still use Twitter, know Twitter, see Twitter every freaking second on TV now.
Right.
So that makes sense.
Yeah. Maybe it's the bird.
You don't trade the owl.
Okay, so I want to talk about your strategy in investing a little bit, and there could be some. This could not be family friendly for one moment. So just if you have, cover your ears for a second. So
disclosure, I always say what I think. Sorry about that in advance if I piss off anyone. My bad.
It's okay. All right. So first off, a lot of people talk about the 3 Ds, right?
Yep.
Okay. Do you want to talk through those real quick, and then we'll talk about the other 3 things that you go by?
Sure.
All right.
Well, there's 2 things.
Right.
There's the 3Ds and the 3 S's rule.
So the 3Ds and the 3 S's, and that's what I was referring to. So hopefully
So
you have
you
your
want
earmuffs
to
on.
talk the 3 S's or the 3Ds?
Well, both. I want
Okay.
to hear your
So,
philosophy on both.
A few years ago, I was giving a talk, and it involved a glass of wine, which I don't have now.
Right.
And so
Because
it
you
was
love
relaxed.
wine. You're a wine. You love wine.
I'm a wino. It's one of my things. I collect wines. Well, I was French after all, right? So, and I was born in the wine country as well, in the Loire Valley. So, people often ask us, what are you looking for in terms of the constituents or the components of a startup, to make a positive decision? And for us, we always look at the team, the product, and the market opportunity. And my good friend Rob Hayes from First Round was asked the same question. He says, I'm just looking for 2 things, a kick-ass team and a big-ass market. Makes sense. And that's sort of, it just came up as, well, at the time I was French, being French, I need a third ass. And I said, I'm looking for a smart-ass team building a kick-ass product in a big-ass market. And that became the 3 S's rule, which made its way into a book, Do More Faster, and is at the back of our business card, and has been, now there is some kind of a painting in the office that sort of shows you what the 3 S's rule sort of means. And then the 3Ds, 3Ds is really, if you think about the optimal component of a team building a consumer internet product, it's really sort of a very strong technical sort of co-founder, the first D, developer. Yeah. The second one is actually design, and design is so important, as we know now, in the providing the experience, the differentiation, the thing that will make the product so good it will sell itself. Right. That's sort of the ultimate goal. And so that's second D, design. And the third D is for consumer internet distribution. Right. Like, if you don't understand distribution, if you don't know what the tricks and means and the rules of the games are, you will have so much of a harder time to actually build a successful company. So development, design, distribution, 3Ds.
And then the 3 S's.
And the 3 S's.
Okay. And so as far as team goes, those traits are things you look for. Can you explain the smart-ass entrepreneur? Like, what does that mean? Like, I guess put a little more context around what that means.
It's super hard. That's why we try and stay fuzzy. Like, have you noticed that when you ask a question to a VC, the first thing he does is to ask another question? Yeah. What do you mean?
I don't know what you mean. What do you mean?
So, smart-ass is really, do we think that that team, and by the way, we've done anything like between backing a solo entrepreneur, someone who was just on his own, like the CEO of Mint, Aaron Patzer, was on his own. He had done everything, and there was like one person in Mint, and I just almost gave him a check, in the first meeting, to having a team of 4 or 5 founders coming to see us, and all having sort of roles and contributions. But sometimes the issue is, okay, there's 4 of you, that's fine, so who's the CEO? And then people start pointing at each other and saying, so that's an issue. Yeah. And unfortunately, people start the journey at 4 or 5, and they typically don't end up at 4 or 5. So we lose a few along the way.
Yeah.
So it's looking at that individual, looking at that combo. Do we feel that they have the passion, the domain knowledge, this sort of unfair advantage that will make them execute and realize the potential of the company in a different way than the rest of the market? And that's often sort of the challenge when you have something like, photo sharing, which is now a market which has been overplayed, but you still have the ability of unique founders like Kevin Systrom and McGregor to build a product which is as magical as Instagram, and get to $1 billion exit in 18 months, which is something which doesn't exist. It's an outcome which is impossible to predict.
So it's a little bit of vision.
It's a mix of vision, it's tenacity, it's empathy, it's it's why it's so hard.
It's a lot of things.
And the best way sort of characterize it is think of it as a scale. And every component of the deal is, a big weight, small weight, a bunch of weights, and at some point, you will tilt. And just to give you an idea, the scale tilts maybe about 20 times a year for us, which is 99.7 times no's and 0.3 times yes. So we say no all the time. That's the hardest part of the job, which is, you get excited, you like the thing, and then you say, no. And we have to say no, that's what we do.
Yeah.
We're professional no sayers.
Do you practice? I mean, do you have to?
No.
Okay.
So it's actually pretty hard to come up with a set of characteristics or whatever, because if you look at all entrepreneurs, I actually pride myself for having a very, very diverse set of entrepreneurs. And, anywhere from my youngest entrepreneur back was like 19. It was his third startup. The most mature was like 52, I think. We're pretty concentrated in terms of geography. We really sort of Silicon Valley, New York, Canada a little bit, Los Angeles, but it's really focused on the US. But we really sort of respect people who have this belief that if there is a wall, they can walk through the wall and build something different.
Yeah, I love that. All right, so let's switch gears for a second. You're here at CES.
Yep.
Why? What brought you out here?
I was wondering that. No, seriously, and I think I've been avoiding CES for a few years because it's just a big zoo, and we don't really sort of learn that much in terms of trends, because there's a bunch of great outfits that write about the trends and everything. And I don't think that CES is sort of trend making anymore. We don't find companies here because by definition we'll invest way earlier. And so I actually visited Frank a few months ago.
Yep.
I was here, visited on project, and I thought, like Bruno, that this was really cool. And so when I had the opportunity to come back to do a couple of speaking gigs for TechCrunch and doing a bit of office hours yesterday, I thought it was actually cool, and that's why I'm here.
That's great. I was curious because you do see a lot more investors, I feel like, especially over the last few years, coming out to CES, and you don't see as many, I don't feel like, at South by Southwest? I don't know. Do you ever?
Oh, yeah. No, South by, there is a ton of VCs as well. Yeah.
Okay.
It's.
Do you go down there?
No.
Okay.
Actually, well, I have a team that enjoys those kind of zoos, and I don't, per se. So I'd rather sort of hang out with entrepreneurs in our office who are much earlier. But what's cool is to get to CES and to see that big ass, Fitbit booth, where there was like so many people I could barely say, hey, is James Park, the CEO, there? No, he's busy. Could you see whether he's here? No, he's busy.
Because you met them when it was...
Oh, when Fitbit was two dudes, James Park, Eric is co-founder, and the Fitbit was a big ass ugly box like that.
It's like a brick you carry around.
Yeah, well,
Now
that was the so-called portable podometer.
Yeah.
And it worked. It's actually portable now. So and that is actually a real satisfaction too. And I also a few of my CEOs, Jason Johnson from August was there yesterday. He had an event as well. So it was basically a great opportunity to catch up with you guys, do a bit of TV time on with Martha Stewart.
Awesome. That's great.
The questions she asked were just so mature, shall we say. Anyway.
What kinds of questions did she ask you?
No, we were doing some kind of a panel, and we had 4 hardware companies presenting to us, and I just thought that the questions were either she was not listening to what they were saying, because the one question she always asked was, what was the price? Well, it's written on the slide here. Glasses. So it wasn't, it was fun, shall we say.
It was fun.
Let's move.
Moving on, yes. We love Martha. So did you get a chance to check out anything else? Like, have you seen trends here at CES? Anything that stands out to you?
The only thing which I noticed, it sounds like finally the auto industry has woken up to connected devices and what it means to have a great seamless experience when you have a cell phone in your car. Because I'm sure you've all sort of felt that there was this sort of disconnect between, your cool shiny iPhone or Android device and this horror that even BMW, Porsche, or Mercedes sort of sell you in terms of, you want to try and integrate and listen to your MP3s.
Right. How does it? Yeah, you
know,
just don't
it's
get in the
just
car and it
horrible.
doesn't work. Like it should just work. Like you should just get in the car and it should know.
It
And
doesn't.
it should fly too. You missed that part earlier, but still, I'm serious. So why do we not have those?
I know. Yeah, but there was a lot of driverless cars
Right. So they're getting there.
around.
Yeah. Next to
So we'll see. I don't know.
There's actually a startup in Boston working on that.
Okay.
Flying cars.
Well, there's a couple of startups doing sort of next generation sort of planes.
Space. They just jumped right to space.
Yeah.
Yeah. They missed that.
I'm
one.
not sure I can do that, but
Yeah.
I need to check my LPA.